All right. So, as we have been doing, we have been interviewing the top three of this month's tournament. We did it last month. This month we're back at it. We did the mono blue deck. We did third place, and we did second place. And we are finally here with the person that got first place, Bex, which played No Limit Hirana. All right. So while we were talking, the energy in my house went out and corrupted the whole file. Then, when we started recording again, OBS decided to change his definitions, his settings, and not record Bax's audio. I found that out and changed it mid recording, but a little bit was lost. So, it was mainly introductions. We just talked a bit how we got introduced to the game. He said that he watched the anime and saw that it had a card game, but it was in Japan, and so he didn't got into it, just got into it when it came out in English. And we talked a bit how ordering stuff from Japan can be a bit costly and a bit hard, depending on the situations. There are people that do it all the time and know how to do it, but you know. Then we talked just. Then he mentioned that it was really nice that his local game store accepted to get Wixoss stuff, and that they have a community and tournaments over there. And then, as always, as I always say, we talked a bit about having events and tournaments in person as have like a different atmosphere completely to it, and it's just nice to be around people playing the same game and all of that stuff. Then he started talking about his deck, which we started talking about Ray, and as he was saying, he likes to have more cards in hand, have the ability to draw more cards, to dig into his deck to get anything he needs. So he's playing both the Rays that let you draw, and one of them lets you draw and makes your opponent discard a random card, which might hit a guard, which will be helpful to get even more damage in that turn if they only had that one in hand. And then after this, we go into Aquino, and I believe in the recording there is still part of it, but he was talking about Aquino being able to go search cards and get cards into your hand, and then the rest you will hear. Oh, and for pieces, we have both pieces that are widely used in this deck, which are pieces that at the moment I believe are one of the strongest. One that makes your opponent lose Enter, and another one that makes your opponent unable to guard your attacks. So, yeah. Just everything was going too well to have a power outage, and then this happened. So, let's just get back to the interview. And sorry for this.
In general is pretty insane. Just it's like the only card in the game that allows you to search your deck, so you can get out any card that you need at the time. And it's second. Oh, actually, searching a deck is also good because it allows you to see what's in your life cloth. If you take the time to do that, you can
Mm-hmm.
at least try to figure out how many bursts are in there. So if you need to play more defensively or not. Although most of the
Yeah.
time when you play this card, you're going for the win, mainly because of its second effect, which makes your opponent discard 3 Enter from their Enter zone if they're level 3 or higher. So that allows you to get past your opponent's guards or like their blocking effects from their assist Elrig, because they
Mm-hmm.
can't use them if they don't have enough Enter to pay for them. So it's
Yeah.
basically just about like supporting. As for the rest of the deck, we talked about the blue cards, but for white you get to play cards like Xiao Yun and Arcane, which are just really useful. They're a bit annoying to remove. They force your opponent to either use like spells or their Elrigs, or in Arcane's case, just really hard to remove in general. Um, and most of the red cards are just like simple removal to support the general game plan of opening up lanes and doing as much damage as possible. Although one particularly useful card is Mars, because sometimes a lane will be blocked and you just can't remove the thing in it. It's got too much power, or it's arcane, it has shadow, something like that. So you can play
Mm-hmm.
Mars, give her assassin, and it doesn't matter what your opponent has there. Mars is able to break through, and you can do that damage. That's sort of like a general overview of the deck.
Mm-hmm. Are there like any cards in the deck that you feel like you don't really see other people running too much? You feel like are more personal choices? And
Um, yeah, so like as I mentioned before, the blue cards. For some
mm-hmm.
reason, when people play No Limit, I, like the lists I tend to see is stuff like mono red, or even just like red white. But like that card jockey can do red white, and I think it does it better than Hirana anyway. So being able to play blue is a real boon to your deck, especially with like drawing cards or stopping attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's also like playing a few copies of some cards is also helpful. Like when the deck lists first came out, you'd see stuff like four Nobunaga or something. You're not going to play four Nobunaga in a game. You probably don't need four in your deck.
Yeah, the
I
cost and
only have
everything.
two. Yeah, because the deck's small and you go through it pretty quickly. And if you
Mm-hmm.
like cards like Go to the Top and stuff like that can also help you find the card if you like really need it in a situation. But I think it's useful playing like one or two copies of some cards just to get you out of certain situations. Like my deck only has one copy of Arcane.
Mm-hmm.
Arcane isn't like good at removing stuff, but it can be useful tech against like Black, for example. Black just has a really hard time getting rid of Arcane because it can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sometimes that just helps you in securing the game. And same with like Mars. You don't need like a lot of copies of Mars because it'd be hard to activate Assassin that many times anyway. But just having one or two is enough to get the effect when you need it. I also have a copy of Kogutsuchi. I think most decks probably play at least one of this anyway. But it's just really useful to be able to get back your level threes, especially when they end up in spots that you don't want them, like you're playing against blue and have discarded your hand, or it's in your life and now it's in your inner zone. You can pay the cost and you can put it into your trash so you can get it back onto your field.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some cool stuff like that that you can do. It's about like
Mm.
running with the main theme, but being flexible enough to deal with other situations.
Yeah.
So I think against most decks, you can probably win turn three, but there are some decks like blue in particular is good at slowing you down. So having options to play the long game is also helpful.
Mm-hmm. All right then. And in this tournament, on the 5 rounds that we got, what did you end up playing against?
I can't remember all the matches, but
Mm-hmm.
round one I actually had a bye, so that really affected my win rate.
Mm, yeah.
Um, round two I played against Blur. He's one of my friends, goes to the same locals as I
Oh.
do. Uh, yeah, so we actually played our match in person.
Mm-hmm.
He played Tamago for this tournament. Most like for example, if you're playing mono red no limit, that matchup would have really struggled against Tamago because from turn like three, Tamago is pretty good at denying your hand, and obviously it's hard to do stuff when you have no cards to play.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have cards like Ray and Trouble to like draw back up is really helpful. It also depends on like when you play them as well. Sometimes you can just like keep a full hand to dissuade them from discarding if they can't get rid of it all. Whereas other times, if you know they're going to get rid of it all, you just hold on, like hold those cards back, and then you use them later on your turn when they can't interrupt your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, you need enough cards to like play each lane out, and sometimes to enter charge as well.
Yeah.
So having card advantage is really important in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't exactly remember which order or which decks it was, but I played against Card Jockey and either Tamago or Diagram for two of my other rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Versus Card Jockey is like what I was saying before. Card Jockey and Hirana at the moment are pretty similar, but Hirana just edges out because of cards like Glory Grow and her once a game effect being able to do an extra damage. She just puts the pressure on a bit harder. which in this format is able to secure the win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for round 5, yeah, versus Tetra, who also plays No Limit. Although his deck, yeah, doesn't play any blue cards. So like, my personal opinion is that that is what gives the advantage to my deck.
Mm-hmm.
But it also comes down to like right plays at the moment, and sometimes a little bit of luck on the life burst.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
remember I was able to secure one of the games with Glory Grow because his last life burst was actually a servant, so he had an opportunity to get another servant back to guard my Elrig attack. But I had
Mm-hmm.
already played Glory Grow, so he was just not able to guard it, and
Oh
Hirana was
yeah.
able to win the game. Yeah, it was incredibly rough because like if that was Card Jockey, for example, if there's endless punchline, they've hit 3 times. They might be able to guard your third hit and live for the next turn.
Yeah. Yeah. I've played against
But
No Limit, and that card just. I was playing against it. They play the piece. I read it. Wait, I can't guard. Let me read it again.
yeah, it's a very simple effect, but it's pretty
Yeah.
deceptive. Like it just gives you 2 keywords: this double crush, can't guard.
Yeah.
That's all it needs. And also go to the top is pretty clutch.
Mm-hmm.
Because like playing that card, you're able to like say no to Akino bye bye. Basically, he didn't have enough Enna to be able to bounce. That's also where Mars can come into handy as well. Because most of the time you have to pay a cost. Because you're playing red, you end up banishing cards a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
with Mars, since you're giving her Assassin, you don't actually feed your opponent at all. Same with
Yeah.
Akino's effect of like bouncing cards to your opponent's hand. You're not giving them Enna, which is which can be important. And like you can play goes to the top to deny them to play their defensive cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a pretty close game in the end though, but I was able to secure it 2-0, going first and second. It's slightly different playing like first and second as well because of like the number of attacks that you get in.
Yeah. Um. Even with the performance that you got this tournament, went 5-0 and got first place, is like there any changes you think about making in the deck, or as of right
Yeah,
now is.
like the deck's pretty good. Although like there's a few cards that I put in that I just like put in on a whim when I first made it. Like I have a copy of Coelacanth, the one that whenever it
Mm-hmm.
attacks allows you to draw a card. Not a great card, but it allows you to draw a card on it, so I put it in. But
Yeah.
I'd probably switch that out for a second copy of Mars
Mm-hmm.
because I only have one copy of Mars, and it can be bad if she's in a spot you can't reach her when you really need her. So having a second
Yeah.
one just helps with the chances of that not happening.
Yeah.
Um, there might be a few cards next set, but I haven't super looked into that for Hirana yet. Like she
Mm-hmm.
already has a lot of the tools she needs, although it's mainly because I like the format as well. Next set there's a card called Xenocluster, a piece,
Oh
which
yeah.
basically, yeah, you know what that one does?
Yeah. If you discard if, well, in attack phase, if you discarded one card, you can draw three, and if you lost one enter, you can enter charge three or something like that.
Yeah. So it's a very important piece when there's cards like go to the top, or even just like blue in general. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so like yeah, if your opponent's ditching your hand, you can just say no, I draw more cards.
Yeah.
Or yeah, in the case of go to the top, you basically say no, your secondary effect did not happen, and I can still
Mm-hmm.
use my defensive cards. Um, so like that might make go to the top not as good anymore, especially if other people are running it. But just like as
Mm-hmm.
a defensive option, it's pretty good to run. Like it just gives you more security against blue and opposing goes to the tops. Although it makes you slightly less aggro, but I think that's the general direction the game's going to head anyway. So Hirana's probably at her best right now, and I'm not sure if she'll become obsolete, but she'll probably fall off slowly as new cards get printed.
Mm-hmm. I feel like in next set, blue decks will have like a better time. Even with Xeno Cluster, if your deck is like around discarding, you your opponent can use Xeno Cluster at the beginning of the attack phase, but during the attack phase you make them discard even more cards. So it's basically like they're just picking cards from the deck to go away again.
Yeah, especially when blue gets more of those cards, like
Mhm.
Tamago's ability is pretty brutal because on attack. So even if you play something like Akino Bye Bye to get one card back into your hand, it's not enough, and they
Mhm.
can just discard the card that you just grabbed back.
Yeah.
Um, I can't remember if there's any other cards that are like during the attack phase, because cards like Fenrir are like at the start of the attack phase. So like
Mhm.
Fenrir would activate, but then you would be able to play Xeno Cluster and draw more cards.
I believe there is one that says like at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, kill it or when your opponent discards or something like that. I can't remember properly. I've looked into the stuff, but I can't remember right now.
Yeah, there's quite a few good blue cards like that. Like the
Mhm.
one where your opponent has to pay two, otherwise it gets like banished, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think blue gets a lot more support, and since blue is more of like say the Stoolie archetype, it like drags the game out a bit more.
Yeah.
So like Hirana can't do her turn three win because she just doesn't have the resources to.
Mhm.
So tactics like that become a little bit less viable.
Mhm.
But like
And
again, Hirana can play blue, so you can also play blue cards to counteract that. And like
yeah.
even though the game will take longer, you just need to like keep the edge basically.
Mhm. Yeah. It's gonna be a thing between like trying out the deck, trying out stuff, new stuff, and seeing what's better in the meta that is coming.
Yeah, and it also really depends on like what your meta plays, like what the people you play with play.
Mhm.
Because like if everyone's playing go to the top, then suddenly Xenocluster becomes very good at countering that.
Yeah.
But like if no one's playing that or blue, then suddenly Xenocluster doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot depends. A lot always depends on the meta that you're playing on, and it might change from store to store.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always good to like build your deck to what you might expect to see, and also like yeah, like build to what your opponents are playing, and like put in one or two copies of some cards, so like in case you need them, those options are there.
Mhm. So I think we talked a bit about everything. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or to mention before we wrap it up?
Um, I feel like I rambled a lot about my deck there, but as more people play the game, it would be good to see like people develop their deck building skills and also their play skills, like
Mhm.
identifying when to play certain cards, what are threats, when to and like more advanced strategies like when to hold on to cards, when to enter deny and stuff like that. So yeah, it'd be really cool playing with the new cards and playing with more people and seeing better decks.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as the game progresses and we get more sets and everything, people will get used to it. Like people that played the game while it was still only on Japanese have like a bit of a how do you call it? They like are a bit more into it than us because they played the game before. They kind of know how stuff works and how they should be building the decks. But we can learn too, and we will get there.
Yeah,
And
I
there
also
is
hear
a
the
lot of
Japanese
people
meta is a bit
that
different.
what, sorry?
I also hear the Japanese meta is a bit different to the English meta.
Mm-hmm. I think that translates a bit in almost every game. I think we are a bit more experimental and try
Hmm.
other stuff. In Japan, as I've seen with other games, it's like you have these decks that probably are more used than anything else, and then you come to the English meta, and we have some really crazy different stuff.
Yeah, like in because I was looking at Japanese decks on Wecross box before I built this deck
Hmm.
because like I obviously didn't really know what I was doing because I was new to the game, so I was like, need
Yeah.
some inspiration. Yeah, like I heard that sometimes they value more expensive cards. Like instead of playing Akino Bye Bye, they'll play one of the other ones that costs more but has more effects on it,
Hmm.
which like implies to me that maybe they're playing like a slower meta or maybe the way that they like yeah play the game is just like a bit different to us. Because like this Akino, sorry, this Hirana deck, very aggressive, and you like every turn you basically just play cards, open every lane, attack as many times as you can.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, they might be playing it differently.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I briefly mentioned that I looked at WeCross box for inspiration, and that's also where I was seeing like Japanese Hirana players play blue cards in their decks. And when I looked at the
Hmm.
effects of it, I realized why they are playing those cards because they're quite powerful,
Yeah.
and it can be worth playing cards for the life burst as long as they fit in with the deck.
Hmm.
Because even in the worst case scenario, like Focalore can still be used as like a 10k beater on the field, which isn't bad. And
Hmm.
it can also be used to pay for colorless costs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Focolor, I think it's really used in a lot of decks. There are people that like run four, people that run two, and people that don't run any, but pretty much goes across the board. I think the effect, the life burst effect, is just sometimes it's just too good to pass on.
Yeah, like it's really situational. Sometimes you can get it at the worst time, but
Hmm.
especially for this Hirana deck, you only have one defensive card, and it's Akino. She stops one attack, so
Yeah.
you kind of have to rely on Life Burst to help you stop other attacks or remove things. Like it's random, but you're likely to hit at least one of something during the game.
Yeah.
And Folklore also just says draw a card, so worst case scenario, you just draw a card, which is pretty good.
Yeah. I've always had like a really bad time with life burst, because the games I've played, I have maximum like two or three life bursts or one on the seven
Yeah,
cards.
depends on how you play the game as well. Because like for this
Hmm.
deck, for example, my opening hand, if it has Life Burst in it, I basically just chuck it back into the deck. Don't really need any of those cards on turn one.
Yeah.
So a lot of my turn level ones are vanilla,
Hmm.
and so that gives you the greater chance of having Life Burst in your life where you want it.
Yeah, that's true.
There's also a bit of a balance of like, yeah, how many Focalors or how many troubles you play. Like I actually only played three because I found four was just slightly too many. Always feels bad
Hmm.
when you're drawing cards and you get another trouble and you just can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Back in the set zero days, there weren't many good cards for your deck, and so people were running like the terrible, really costly spells just to like fill out the deck because they had good
Yeah.
life burst effects. But they're
Hmm.
just really not cards that you wanted to actually play. So if
Yeah,
they
this
ended up in
is
your hand, they were
just.
pretty useless.
Hmm. Just for life burst.
Yeah. So that's why it's good when cards like Folklore it has good life burst on it, and you can actually play it as a Signy on the field, so it's still
Hmm.
useful. Whereas spells, sometimes you just can't play them.
Yeah, it has a body and can help out that way too.
Yeah, it's mainly back to like that card advantage that I was talking about earlier, because
Hmm.
spells are like a neg one, because you have to play the card. Whereas, yeah, Signies, normally they have effects and you put them on the field, so they're pretty useful.
Hmm.
And that's why it's very scary when you have cards like Tamago get rid of your entire hand because then you're stuck top decking. But you also only have two cards, so you can't even fill all the lanes.
Hmm. Yeah, and then if you need enter, you need to enter charge with one, and you only have one, and Yeah.
Yeah, you can get down to some pretty dire situations. But at the same time, um, especially if you're going for the win, you can make some pretty big plays. Like, there's been a situation where like I've charged servants, for example, because I needed the color
Mm-hmm.
because I figured if I'm gonna win this turn, don't need to guard anymore, so you
Yeah.
go for it. So it's just like game knowledge like that that can really help you rise in the ranks.
Mm-hmm. All right. I don't know if there is anything you'd like me to leave in the description, anything to shout out or something like that.
Um, didn't think about this. Not really. I've just been playing Wecross on these like online tournaments and locals and stuff. Haven't really made
Mm-hmm.
any content or anything.
Right.
But I think you said you'd have my deck list in the video, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll put
that
it
should be
up
good
when we
enough.
were talking about it, and so people can look at it while we talk about the cards and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Actually, maybe you could leave a link to Wecross box. I'd recommend people go have a look
Mm-hmm.
at that. You can go by the pictures, even if you can't read the cards, on what decks people are playing, just what kind of cards they're putting in it. Be some good
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
inspiration.
Then if
Yeah.
what? Sorry.
Oh, no, no, that's all good. I was just gonna say, yeah, thanks for the interview.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if there isn't anything else more to talk. I'm really grateful for everyone to accept doing these kinds of things and coming over and talking about the stuff. It's like a learning experience not only for me but to help other people in the internet that might not know much and would like to get into the game and just want to hear about these decks and all of that stuff. I'm really grateful for everyone accepting it and coming over. We talking over the decks and all of that stuff. I just like to say thank you to everyone every time, sometimes 5 or 6 times. I just really, I'm really appreciative of everyone. Just I think the community in general is just such a great community and just helps a lot, and everyone just is all right with stuff like this.
Yeah, I think it's good that we're getting content out, especially for like yeah, newer players or people who are interested in deck building or people who just want to know how this deck works. It's good that they can yeah watch these videos and learn about that.
Hmm. All right, then I'll not be taking any more of your time because it's later on the day for you, early for me.
Ah, that's all
uh,
good.
so yeah, I'll leave you to the rest of your day, and just once again, thank you a lot for coming over.
Yeah, no, thanks for the interview.